Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Trilce Navarrete, and together with Elena Villaespesa, we prepared this small video on the current state of video production of MCN museums. So why video analysis? Well, it seems that social media has been exploding. Museums not only use social media to connect to the young audiences, they also use social media to reach to those that perhaps otherwise will not come in contact with the collections. But are we doing it right? Metrics are only a number that signals the performance of the institution. However, these metrics need to be placed in context in order to make sense, either with the institutional past, present, future, or perhaps with other similar organizations for comparison. We do lack a harmonized method for measuring success. And so that's why we have asked the MCN community to participate in an online survey. And these are some of the results that I'd like to present today on the current practice of video production. But before that, I'd like to share an overview of the international use of social media in museums. If we take a look at the larger European institutions and some American institutions, the Louvre has been ranked #1 by having on-site visitors by the art newspaper for a number of years. They seem to be doing quite well in terms of Facebook followers. They have over 2 million Facebook followers. Smithsonian does quite similar on YouTube. Smithsonian is one of the institutions that does particularly well on followers on YouTube. You can also see some of the other institutions participate in the panel, MCA Chicago, SFMOMA, and the Met. Now, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, the Met is doing quite well in Facebook followers, Twitter followers, and Instagram followers. Video is estimated to account for over 70% of all internet content traffic, and this is only to grow by a factor of 4 by 2020, according to Cisco. Perhaps you all know that Google is the #1 entrance to the internet, but perhaps you don't know that the #2 entrance to the internet is YouTube. This is followed by Facebook, and I included also Wikipedia as #6, according to the Alexa ranking. YouTube has about 1 million unique visitors per month and 1 billion video views per day. Facebook counts a little bit different, 1 billion users and 8 billion video views per day. Now, Wikipedia has about 15 million visitors per month on the online free encyclopedia, but they also have a very active group of volunteers that keep putting video to illustrate the various Wikipedia articles. So video is not only an important source of information, it's also a very characteristic form of communication and definitely a preferred form of entertainment. So what did MCN Museums report doing on their video production? Well, it seems that we asked the MCN community, we got about 26 responses on the current state of production, on the resources used for video production, on the challenges for evaluation, and on the channels for dissemination. And it seems that from our survey population, the range is wide. We have institutions that produce 1 video per year. We have institutions that produce 100 videos per year. Generally, most institutions produce more than 20 videos per year. These videos are done mostly by the media producer, supported by other staff. Most of the videos are documenting lectures or events, followed by performance, followed by promotional videos, followed by promotional videos for the institution, and educational videos. About short half of the surveyed museums use video for audio tours. Most institutions do, more than half of the institutions do place, almost half of the institutions disseminate content on different channels depending on the type of content. About a third of the institution, about a quarter of the institutions disseminate everything everywhere, and about a small quarter conduct further production to cater the videos to the different channels. What are the main channels used for dissemination? Number one is YouTube, not surprisingly. This is followed by Facebook, also not surprisingly. And then we have Instagram video and Twitter as sites. The tools to evaluate the content, the performance of the videos is YouTube Analytics, followed by Facebook, not surprisingly. And then we have some of the Google Analytics for measuring the on-site traffic per institution. What metrics are reported, overwhelmingly greater portion of museums report only number of video views, and about less than half, a little bit less than half of institutions venture in other metrics, such as the average time for the video, or the percentage video watch, or the traffic sources. And in terms of what are the challenges when evaluating video, the number one is lack of strategy to guide these targets, as well as the lack of resources, including time and know-how. So what does this all mean? From our 26 MCN institutions that responded to the survey, we can say that museums do use major social media channels for dissemination of content. Number one is YouTube, followed by Facebook. And then we have video, Instagram, and Twitter. And there is an interest and a need for developing new metrics beyond the usual number of views to the video. That might say something more about the impact of the video production. However, the main challenges are not only the lack of an institutional strategy to guide some of the metrics, but also a lack of resources, including time and know-how and staff. So that's it seems like we do need a how-to guide for video metrics. If you join us on the second video, we'll present a quick guide on how to go about developing these for your museum.
So, before showing the second half of their presentation, I wanted to pause and see if anyone had any questions about what that was, especially since the quality of sound is a little rough on Trilce's recording. So to sort of reiterate where all that data came from, we together, our two special interest groups, created a survey with Emily to really understand what the community is doing, where the limits of our knowledge are, so that we could start to design an evaluation tool set that could be adapted for each institution, so that we're getting data and able to do something with it. Because what's the point of data if we can't react to or incorporate it into what we produce? And so those two key points, the qualitative and quantitative. Clearly, the quantitative is what primarily we've been working with. And so what we're hoping to do is continue to build this tool set by continuing to send surveys around to the community, hoping that everyone will participate so that we can really develop that. But at this point, does anyone have any questions about what we just looked at? Yeah.
What are your about what you just said, though? What are your thoughts about qualitative evaluation and how best?
Yeah. So actually, the second video gets a little bit into creating a framework. So if everyone, is everyone awake now that they hear a living, breathing voice in the room? Yeah? Yeah, we're awake? Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to put another short video where that is the going over the framework that Elena and Trilce started to create based on the results of that survey. And then we'll keep going. With living, breathing voices.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Trilce Navarrete, and together with Elena Villaespesa, we prepared this short video on draft benchmark on how to measure the performance of your video production. What makes good video? You will need at least to start 4 main points. Number one, what is it that you're trying to do? This question can have a more qualitative variant. Let's say that you want your institution to be the source of information for fashion, for elementary school kids, or perhaps you have a more quantitative goal, which is to increase your visitors' numbers age 16 to 30 by 20% in the next year. And so for that, you might decide to engage in video production, but you will need to know exactly what's going on at the starting point. So where are you at right now, in order for you to then make sense of the metrics if they start to change. We have identified 3 main areas that you might want to consider. For instance, reach. What type of audiences are you reaching? Who is watching your videos? And what type of people are these? Where are they? That sort of thing. There's also the question of engagement. What are people using your videos for? What are they doing? Are they retweeting? Are they resending, reposting? How long are they watching? And so on and so forth. And the last is impact. How are people changing by watching your videos? And some of these metrics you can gather regularly. How are things changing? This can be very quantitative and some user-generated data. You might want to also engage in some user surveys. And eventually you will have to stop and try to make sense of everything that's happening. So are you going in the right direction, or perhaps should you change your work practice in order to deliver other types of video or other types of dissemination channels in order to do whatever you want. Eventually, you might, once you get a finesse in these metrics and evaluation of video production, you might actually develop your own key intangible performance indicators. But for that, we might need another video. Perhaps you might want to ask Rob Stein and others walking around at MCN2016. If we start by looking at some of the results that the MCN community has shared with us in the next slide, what metrics do you report to your team and your senior management? Most of these metrics are very much on the reach level. So number of video views, traffic sources and embeds, and audience profile. And this is followed by engagement, average time of the video watch, or the percentage of video watched. Some other metrics that are a little bit more tricky, and these are more the impact. So what are people actually doing with your videos in terms of changing their way of perhaps engaging with your museum, or their perception of your collections, or perhaps deciding to visit your museum for the first time. Some of these impact of your museum you might want to capture using user surveys. If we were to put this on a more organized way, we might come up with a nice table, as you can see on this next slide, in which the left column shows the 3 areas that you can measure: reach, engagement, and impact that we're proposing. And on the middle column, you can see some of the metrics in order to measure those changes. And on the right column, you see the methods and the tools that you can use in order to measure this. And these slides will be available online. You can further discuss on site. And we would just like to close this video by saying that when you want to create a video, you will definitely need a very clear idea on where are you going, what do you want to achieve with this video. Then you will want to realize where are you at now, so that when you start gathering data, you see how things are changing. At the end, you might want to stop and smell the roses and see where are you at, and evaluate if you need to change your work practice. I give the floor back again to Emily and Anna.
All right. Thanks, Jill. Thank you. Okay. And actually, is Sheila here? Sheila Carey? No, she couldn't find it. So Sheila's here to represent the data in Insights SIG because Elena and Trilce could not be here. So reach out to her on Twitter, or if you need her information. Also, Trilce and Elena are both online and available to answer detailed questions that we can't. We'll do our best, but we are not the metrics experts at the table. So let me get back to our slides. So, oh yeah.
She mentioned that the slides are going to be available.
Yes.
Do you know, is it a SlideShare, or
I will tweet out the slideshows, and we're actually, MCN is working on distributing. There's been a bit of discussion on what's the most accessible way to distribute, because SlideShare and eShow and some of these other platforms are not very accessible. So we're trying to work that detail out, and then once we do, they'll be like tweeted out like crazy, and we're going to link back to them from the schedules, and probably from the MCN website. We're going to do our best to make it very easy to find the recordings and the slides themselves. So one of the things that has really driven my practice and my interest in this is understanding how we can improve our performance, right? And that was why I reached out to Trilce and Elena in the first place. So benchmarking is one of these key ideas of analyzing the performance of things and the performance of our videos. And so I figured out that there's this amazing tool created by Digital Methods, which is based in the Netherlands, actually out of the university where Trilce teaches. This link I will share. I will tweet it out as soon as I'm not distracted talking, and the link will be in the presentation. But I did a little screenshot just so you can see what this thing is. It's very, very simple. It's a form where you just enter a channel ID or a playlist ID, and you can scrape the public-facing data off a YouTube channel. And so to get that channel ID so that you could just scrape all of the walkers' data off of their YouTube channel, because that's our biggest peer, our closest peer museum at the MCA Chicago. You can use developer tools in Google. Those channel IDs used to be part of the URL, but now that Google has your fancy channel name, the code gets hidden. So you have to open up the source code of YouTube and look at that source code. And it's in the data YT ID field. Hopefully you can see that tiny, tiny screenshot. But basically what I'm doing is using the developer tools, mousing over the channel holder. In this case, it's Mocha TV. Click on that, and then it'll highlight in the developer tools to the right, and then I can look for that YT ID field and copy the channel ID and paste it into this field and submit the search. And then what it'll do is scrape the 500 videos, 400 videos, how many ever videos since the beginning of that channel's existence. And so I have this really awesome spreadsheet of all the public-facing data. And I just put it all into one form. Unfortunately, it doesn't give us a lot of the engagement statistics or information, because that's hidden in the channel's analytics. So you can see your own statistics in terms of the view time, when people are dropping off. The details of YouTube analytics are really amazing now. But it does give me a pretty great picture of what these museums are doing. So the first key is figuring out who are you going to compare yourself to. So selecting peer museums, pretty straightforward. I think we all compare ourselves to somebody who's of a similar size, similar budget, hopefully similar staff setup, like there is someone who makes video there, so that you're not comparing yourself to somebody who maybe doesn't have the staff to do the same kind of thing. But then what I like to also include are at least one aspirational museum. So a museum or a channel on YouTube that I think is nailing it. Or was nailing it at some point and isn't anymore, Mocha TV. What I did is I pulled the information for the Hammer Museum, the Louisiana channel, which is my personal favorite. They're just amazing. They make fantastic content. Sorry, Johnny, no Art 21 on here. But Louisiana channel, MoCA, because I was really curious to see how MoCA TV performed. And then for similar size, I put ourselves in there. I thought about removing us because I was embarrassed, but I left us in for sake of being open. The Stedelijk, Walker, I was analyzing the Whitney, but their scope of content is really actually quite different because they have a much larger permanent collection and a different kind of YouTube engagement. And so I ended up taking them out in the end. And then the Yerba Buena Center, because I think they make really awesome videos. So rather than show you screenshots of Tableau, I figured I would just open Tableau. Except I need to switch to mirroring mode, sorry. Because why not? Oh, look at that low resolution. Okay. So, has anyone used Tableau? Oh, cool. So I'm the expert. I don't know it that well. I just downloaded it I've worked with it over the past couple years, but I really haven't gotten that deep into it. But it's so easy to use. It's really fun for mapping data. And so the reason that I wanted to open it up is so that you can really see the information as I mouse over the different line graphs. And so I started out with just an overview of view count over time. So you can sort of see when, who's had channels longer, who started out super strong and then took a nosedive. But for the most part, for peer institutions, we're kind of hanging out pretty low, right? We're not cat videos. Okay, cool. So something that I was always curious about and have always said is that short content is better. And I've just sort of said that anecdotally. I've sold everyone on that because we know that people drop off after about 2 minutes when watching our videos. But that actually, the view count, even if they're watching 5 minutes of an hour-long video, there is a level of engagement there, even if they're watching the middle 5 minutes and not watching the full hour. So I was pretty impressed by the Walker's spread because they defied all my logic of how they were able to produce these long videos. So that you have the duration in minutes on the bottom and the view count on the y-axis. And so they have all these really fantastic outliers, which are no doubt really cool lectures like Neil Gaiman. But some of them are lesser known, and so they already have an audience to get that these sort of niche content to get. It's not a huge view count. We're not talking about millions of views, but comparatively to some of us who are really hanging out in the corner, this is our typical pattern, which is a big clump in the corner. They're short and not being looked at that much. And so we're pretty similar to the Stedelijk or the Yerba Buena. The Hammer Museum also has a lot of these outliers. So I'm not going to be making a lot of conclusions here. I just wanted to share this data with you to get the conversation going. Because the other thing that I really would love to see is for us to start sharing some of that more detailed data that we have, because I think we can learn a lot from each other. So the next question became view count over time. So how do you build your audience over time who sort of had moments in the sun? So if we look at MoCA, you can see exactly when MoCA TV was active, and you can see the number of videos. So each of these dots represents a video production. And you'll see there's this sort of evaporation pattern that everybody has, where there's a lot at the bottom with not a lot of views. And then there are these videos that trickle up, right? And they get attention. The Louisiana channel, being awesome, of course, has much more of a rainstorm look. We have a similar bubbling. The most important thing I noticed about videos over time and the high-performing videos is the spread. So what I'm seeing is a lot of videos being released regularly. When I look at us, I see clumps. So we basically produce a lot of content, we sit on it for ages, then we finally get around to uploading it, is the theory I have over how these sort of ugly little clumps happen. It's like, okay, we'll upload, Friday of every month. So clearly we need to get a little bit better at having that really nice spread so that we're regularly producing content so that people can see. And actually, it's funny, the walker has a few clumps, and I started to look at these, and so this clump is superscript. So when they have a clump, it's because they did a crazy 3-day event where they produced a zillion videos because they documented every single session. Kind of like the MCN channel, which just gets one big clump every year around late November. So really being able to look at the details in Tableau has been really fascinating. Yerba Buena has a really nice spread. They don't have as much trickle up, but that's sort of, yeah, this is the pattern. So then I wanted to compare view count to likes, because in theory likes are where we're having impact, right? We're having a deeper engagement. The pattern is nearly the same to likes to view count. So we really can say, okay, let's use view count as our metric for understanding engagement, because it doesn't differ that much from likes. So being able to glean little things like this very quickly in a visual way. And so because of the view-like correspondence, you have this nice line that goes up across. We had a theory because of this outlier video that has like 300,000 views at the Walker, How to Disappear in America. So Emily and I were like, oh, maybe it's how-to videos. People really like how-to videos online, so maybe they're searching that. And so I decided to do a filter right before. I didn't even show this to Emily yet. But clearly it doesn't win you that much because we still have the corner clump in the 0 views. The other thing, I wanted to look at frequency of publishing in a different view, so I broke it out into these bar graphs. So there's the beginning of Mocha TV, and you can see these blocks of how many records are being produced by week, and the sort of these bursts. And so Stadlich and MCA both have this sort of burst approach. There's a lot we can do with this, so I could continue to putz around in Tableau, but I won't waste your time. So let's see if I can get back. Any questions? I might not have the answer. Oh my God, don't break. Okay. Whew.
Is there a way to break down the data based on playlists?
Yeah, you could create, because that scraper tool I was using, you can also scrape by playlist. And so what you could do is create the data sets by scraping by playlist and scrape each playlist and create another column to identify the playlist for each block of data you grab. And then what I do is I put it in one big spreadsheet and drag that into Tableau, and then you could put the playlist by color or, put the playlist by the symbols. There's all different ways to organize it. And so, yeah, it's possible for sure.
Can you also, can you track shares?
Tracking shares.
How often each video?
Is that publicly available on YouTube?
I'm trying to remember if that's publicly available information. Let me just quickly look in the... The fact that it was shared, yeah. I feel like share. No,
I feel like that's sometimes public and sometimes not. Like I feel like that might be.
Yeah, It might be an optional feature so that it's not included in the scrape. This isn't the only way to scrape the public-facing data off YouTube. Also, there's like some other really more tenuous methods, but this is so stupidly easy. I feel like we should just scrape all of each other's channels and make one big Excel spreadsheet and have a Tableau party. Because it'll be so much fun, just digging around and trying to see what we can glean. So, like I said, I've only been digging around with this for a few weeks, but the learnings that I pulled away is the frequency of posts, right? We want to be regularly producing content. We want a continued commitment. Mocha TV's popularity was huge. I mean, they also used the easy win category. They had a lot of celebrities and music videos. So that gets you some instant attention so that people start following your channel. And once people are following, they're more likely to see your videos, like your videos, engage with your videos. But what's interesting is how their view count still takes a bit of a dive, right? They really just needed to sustain a continued production. Short duration does perform better, like in the scope of those corner clumps. You can see that there's a verticality to the short duration. Those outliers, it's for the institutions that already have that audience and a sustained engagement. We know the Walker documents every lecture, so we can rely on going there. Whereas the MCA, we document some lectures. And so I don't know that I can always go to YouTube and see every single lecture. Another practice that actually is the way we make video for MCN, we just simply pair the audio with the slide that tells the speaker information and the title of the session. So it's functionally like when somebody puts an album on YouTube, but at least you're continuing to engage, you're continuing to share content, you're continuing to activate, and you're reminding people that that content is going to be there, that every lecture will be there. And clearly there are exceptions to every rule. So, I mean, what I took away from this and what I'm going to be taking back to the museum is we're entering our 50th year, and we just rebranded the MCA Chicago. We launched a new website. It's less than a year old. It's time for us to focus on content now that we survived that launch. So now I'm looking closely at our production goals that we've had, which is we want to capture our program content. We want to share it for future scholarship, for the archive. We want to capture as much as we can. We at least audio record everything we do. Ever since I've arrived, I've said we got to create better and better content. Went for our productions. Let's make beautiful documentaries that people love and adore. Let's take the time to really do the writing, write our treatments, write our scripts, consider it, give tons of time for review so that we can really massage those videos into really beautiful pieces. But clearly we're not producing as much content, so we're not doing that regular commitment. And so the new practices that I want to implement based on the results of that data is, and we've already started doing this, is taking our outtakes, little snippets that don't make it into the final artist documentary, and just throwing those online. Carrie James Marshall talking about Tupperware. It was the most lovely, heartwarming segment. He's just showing us how he keeps his paint from 6 years ago. Didn't make sense in the documentary at all, but it's a great little 30-second video. And so using that content so that we say, okay, let's make, so we cranked out 5 videos in a couple days, and then we released them once a week. Every Friday, we released a video at noon. So that then we were starting to practice this regular release of content. And then also prototyping informal content capture. We don't have the budget to do more documentaries. We don't have the budget to necessarily start live streaming every single program event that happens at our museum. But we can start capturing with iPhones. We could start finding ways to share content in a more informal way. Clearly, you need to get buy-in from the institutions. People like high-quality content. So how can we start prototyping, playing with low-budget methods so that we can say, look, to achieve this goal of more regular content, we will engage in this other way. Let's see how it works and do a little prototype program. So now I will turn it over to Emily, who will talk about a museum that's just come back. Should we switch?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
There it goes.
So how do you actually get started in creating a sort of framework of analyzing videos once you've decided that that's something that's important for you to do? At SFMOMA, we kind of just emerged from this reimagining of ourselves. We relaunched our museum. As part of that, we reimagined some of the content that was already being produced by our museum and sort of started launching new types of content as well. And now we're kind of emerging out of that into this moment where we have time to reflect and really begin to delve into how in practice are we going to use analytics to evaluate these new things that we're producing. So I'm hoping that this case study provides examples of how when you get onto the ground and start actually trying to shape your tools, that it can be like more complicated than you might have anticipated, that there's a lot of nuance that needs to be considered, and that you really need to establish at the forefront what the goals of your productions are, because video production at a museum is often not a straightforward one-size-fits-all type of thing. There's potentially different departments producing videos sometimes. Different stakeholders have different goals with their videos, and it's important, if those goals are important to your institution and you want to achieve them through video, to know what those are and how best to measure those things.
I'm gonna grab my phone so I can tweet.
So a bit of background about the way our institution is structured when it comes to video, just to give some context. There are two main video producing arms at SFMOMA. Interpretive media team does the artist interview program, and they, as part of reinventing the new SFMOMA brand, really reinvented the way those artist interviews work, doing a much more cinematic approach and actually going to artist studios and talking to artists in the space where they work and live. And the web and digital team has really just begun producing video content that's meant to be sort of an institutional storytelling track that gives insight into the humans who work at the museum and hopefully create more engagement through that. So I spoke to Erica Gangsey and Sarah Bailey Hogarty, who are the two content producers in charge of these two separate streams at SFMOMA, and took away different learnings about what their intentions are, what their goals are, and then how they're sort of moving into the analytical phase based on those things. So an artist interview is a 3 to 5 minute piece on a specific artist's practice or something that's particularly unique about that artist. The goals of this type of video are primarily, well, not primarily necessarily, but a big thing that distinguishes this type of video and the goals that are driving it is that this team wants to be able to create a long-lasting online resource that gives future generations even access to these artist voices and their own words and sort of historically important messages about their practice. And the priorities that I've listed down here reflect the types of decisions that go into how videos actually get made, which I think is important to consider when we're shaping goals, is that these priorities, I'm so sorry.
Is this your water?
Thank you. Basically, it's hard to evaluate a goal if you don't know exactly why something is being produced. And the real reasons why things tend to be produced are sort of the things that come up as priorities for specific video productions. So for example, for the artist interview videos, there's storytelling criteria that help to prioritize videos, and there's also the need to prioritize artists that, for example, are older, that might not always be around to be interviewed, and to prioritize artists that are in the institution's collection. So there's a lot of kind of different factors that go into deciding what videos actually get made. So as we look at the analytics of this, this is the talking to Erica Gangsey about the analytics process for this was mostly a reflection on the strategy that led to these new cinematic artist interview videos, which is based on a round of analytics that was done previous to the sort of relaunch of this series. And they used analytics, mostly view counts, to determine that with a contemporary audience now, which is also an audience that wants to be reached by these videos, that cinematic approach was really the most compelling thing. However, another important goal of these videos is that their success should not be necessarily tied to view count in the eyes of our institution, because they are meant to exist as that more long-lasting legacy type of resource. And what might be more important than necessarily a number in terms of what we're achieving with these videos is, what are they doing to the people who are watching them? Do the people who are watching them deeply care about the artists that they're experiencing? Do they come away from that video more inspired, more enlightened about something? That's something that's just as important to this producer as view counts, if not more important. I can barely stand to listen to my own voice. So a next step that came away from that is to really look at qualitative evaluation as a complement to quantitative evaluation, because there really isn't any other way to determine whether videos that might not necessarily have this large reach are in fact still having an impact on the audience that they do matter to. Then there's another side of video production, which we call institutional storytelling, which is produced by a different department, the department that I'm in. And we have a different set of goals and a different set of priorities. So one sort of less tangible goal of ours is to humanize the museum. Basically, as we've relaunched and sort of become this new mammoth institution that really emphasizes its size and is trying to take its place in sort of the larger art world, we want to make sure that our community and our visitors recognize that we are still human beings, that we're still sort of accessible and friendly. And so the videos that we make try and highlight the people who work at the museum and kind of give behind the scenes approach to sort of draw back that curtain and show the museum as people. Secondarily, though, they do also ideally perform a semi-marketing or content marketing purpose to attract visitors to the museum, to promote specific events. And a lot of the time it's we're making videos about specific programs or about specific offerings that certain departments may have requested. So that really determines when we have, for example, a department that's requested a video on a specific program that they offer, that really shapes priorities and goals in a very different way than, something that has a more vague and nebulous purpose. The example that I want to use is we created a series of videos about different educational offerings at the museum for teachers, and that is a very niche audience. And we had very specific goals with those videos where we wanted to let teachers know that these programs existed, and then create a story that will walk them through what these programs are like if you experience them, and hopefully attract them to want to do these programs. So as I move on to talking about how we analyze that, something that became very clear to us as we were sort of trying to figure out how we were going to take a new analytical approach is that when we have an audience that's that niche and a goal is that specific, it, again, is very important to turn to a qualitative analysis for that. Another thing that came to our attention as we began looking at how successful our different videos were is that there are a lot of factors that play into varying levels of success in terms of qualitative view counts. And a lot of that has to do not just with video content, although that's obviously an important component, but placement within our website, the platforms that we publish on aside from our website. Different platforms had different kind of inherent audience numbers already. And so we decided that it was important also to sort of analyze the entire environment in which we're publishing alongside of content and sort of create an analytics process that takes all of those things into account. So takeaways. View counts kind of mean what you want them to mean or what you interpret them to mean based around what your goals are. And that's really the most important thing, is you can't know exactly what success is unless you know what you're trying to achieve. Just having a goal of like numbers that seem high is, first of all, in terms of what museums tend to be able to accomplish, not very realistic. I still think that there's ways to improve that and that that's a laudable goal. But I think there's also other ways to measure impact that are really relevant to the types of things that museums do that are unique and not necessarily equatable to a lot of the other content that's out there competing with museum content. If there's museum videos that are really intending to have a deep, engaging impact on a small niche audience, which does seem to be something, that does happen in the museum world, it's important to identify those videos to make sure that, like, if you're creating videos that you want to have reach and you're creating videos that you want more to have impact, that you can sort of separate those in your analysis and understand, what approaches are appropriate for what videos, and then also evaluating the whole publishing environment that is factoring into whether the videos that you want to have reach are achieving that reach, and whether the videos that you want to serve a niche audience are reaching that audience. And now you can do the conclusion before my voice disappears.
Okay, I'm fine. So just to throw, ooh. It's a very good HDMI cable they have in here. So to go back to Trilce and Elena's slide towards the beginning, we wanted to sort of conclude with going back to the beginning of our engagement with the metrics group, because it really reified some things that I think we knew going into this, like knowing your goal is something that we've always advocated for as producers. I think all of us can say, like, yeah, we try to know, but getting the department who wants something made, or getting the director of the museum who says, but it's so cool that this and this and this is happening, or your education department tells you about this event and they're like, oh, we really got to document it, and then you get there and you don't really understand how to make that function in video because you don't even know what the point of their documentation is. And so asking those questions from the get-go and thinking about it both in terms of, qualitatively, what do you want to achieve with that video? And then quantitatively, right? What are the measurable things that we want to see happen when we release this video? And then, that looking at reach, engagement, and impact, and monitoring that over time, because that's really how we start to understand, as we change our practice, is it changing the results? And then we can start to get more detailed with our modes of evaluating, or what we measure, how we measure. So maybe, who's ever had a focus group watch their videos and tell them if they liked them or not, or what they liked about them? Anyone? Awesome. That's the first person I've ever...
The focus group was all of my coworkers.
Oh, okay. That doesn't count. I do that. So beyond our colleagues, do we show our content to anyone and evaluate how that content is performing by asking people, these same questions that some commercial producers are pretty, it's part of standard practice, right? Evaluating a commercial before it goes into the marketplace. So I don't have an answer of how to implement that, but that's one of the ideas that's come out of this process, right? In terms of needing to start thinking about what we capture, how we capture it, and how we can use the data we capture together to start to bring answers together. Because Emily's like, so the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago is breaking ground in a few weeks on an interior renovation project. We want to signal to the world that something has changed, even though it's only on the inside. We've also rebranded. We have a new identity similar to SFMOMA. But you guys are a little further down the line, so it's exciting to sort of look at these things at different phases to see how what you've learned in that process of changing the modes of production and really identifying who's producing what and for what ends. So one of the things that I keep saying is the iterating on data capture. But also what my hope is out of this group and through word of mouth from the people that are in this room to sort of spread the word about this activity that's happening around data capture and talking with each other, having a community. That's the whole point of the special interest groups, so that we can start to design peer groups for benchmarking, so that I can reach out to colleagues at the Walker and we can get that deep internal data about the engagement, right? How long did people watch? When did they drop off? So that we can really get some rich data on the engagement side together. And so my hope is that I'd love to see SFMOMA, the Met, and oh gosh, who else would be great to throw in that mix? I mean, even the Louvre, right? So looking at sort of the huge museums, and then the museums that are sort of on a similar scale to you, and putting together that data set, and looking to see if the big museum data set has a similar shape to the medium-sized museum data set, and then how does that compare to a small museum's data set. But if we're going to continue building evaluation tools, the next step is to do another community survey, right? That was how this whole thing started, was a Google form that we sent around to understand what is happening at museums so that we know what we can be measuring. And so we, in reaction to the results of the first survey, have created a survey version 2 that we're going to tweet out. We just have to do one more proofread right after this. So we'll be tweeting it out within the next 15 minutes to get another data set so that we can answer more detailed questions. Now that we see sort of, oh, well, everybody makes a ton of video. What about that video? What are the types of video? What raw footage is being captured and maybe not published, right? That's just for the archive, so that we can really look at video collectively across the institution. But one of the questions to you guys is, what would you want to know? What questions should we add into the survey version 2 that you think would be really helpful to have a cross-section of an answer across the MCN community for? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to repeat that into the microphone so it's on record. So the questions about archive management, specifically in context of digital asset management not being typically available to accommodate video in most institutions. I know it's not in my institution. So how are we storing, backing up, and logging our footage? awesome question. We'll definitely incorporate that into the survey. I know for us, we see what we're creating now as the archive of the future. And so we're working collaboratively with the library staff at the museum to make sure that our data set is matching theirs in terms of cataloging. All of this is in spreadsheets because it's not in a system yet, and a lot of it is still being digitized. Right now, I have an intern who's been doing amazing work with our archive, and so she's gone through the logs from the scholar and filmmaker who did the first round of digitization. And she came back around to me after then looking at our database spreadsheet, and she said, "What happened between 2000 and 2010?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's mini DV. We don't know what's there. We have no idea." Yeah.
There's a group, AMIA-Net, which is a group of moving image archivists. And they get together virtually and physically and talk to each other about all of these things. So that's their AMIA-net.org.
One thing I would add.
Yeah.
One thing I would add to this question too.
Solutions for all of preservation
Right.
and asset management
Right.
issues.
And our librarians are definitely, I mean, I know at my institution our librarians are engaged with that. It's the current production methods. And so I was, but what we need to do is set up a pro session where we have maybe someone from the group, lead a YouTube session for the MCN community on that topic specifically.
But sort of building off of that, I would be interested to hear in terms of archiving how many institutions like SFMOMA want a solution that will both archive video and also be sort of a day-to-day digital asset management system for like ongoing production needs.
That's the current strategy. You have offline, the master, tuck it away, have a presentation size that you can share, distribute.
Yeah. So
Some of the dam vendors who are here, and the ones we just selected the same vendor that MoMA, SFMOMA,
NetX? Yeah.
that we use, and they have very good workflows
absolutely.
for audio and video.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think one of the questions comes to the museums that don't have a budget to do anything about it. And so what are best practices when you really just have a pile of hard drives? Which when I first started doing research for the special interest group, when we were forming the group, was that question, how do you store your video? And almost everyone said, well, I got this pile of hard drives.
Many piles of hard drives.
Kind of the less expensive version of NetX, which is the Census portfolio.
Right.
If you're a small museum.
Yeah, that's what we have. Yeah.
So you can have the same strategy.
If you have a server that can support it, which is the big holdup. I think a lot of organizations I've talked with. Any other questions you'd like to see on the survey?
Average view duration would be great. Just kind of some retention statistics as well as playback locations. Like we're seeing a lot of our longer programs are played back much more on TVs versus our shorter videos get played back a lot more on mobile and computers. And you can see that all in your web analytics to see how you're delivering your content and how people are receiving it. And you can actually look at how the different view durations on longer programs played back on TVs versus other devices. So things like that I think are interesting and you can get some insights from.
Yeah. So we're going to add to the survey a question about average view duration. Some of the core analytics that YouTube serves up and Facebook serves up. So average view duration, playback device location. Any other core analytics that you think would be really great?
Well, building on that, and maybe it's already in what you just said, I'm curious in the mobile space when people are viewing video, where are they viewing it? Are they in the institution? Are they at home? Viewing, like mobile viewing on site
On-site versus off-site.
Is that? I don't know how easily that is.
I know how to do that in like regular analytics with my website.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to do that in YouTube, but we'll see if we can figure that out.
I'm not sure either. I don't think that it's easy to get geographical playback information.
Or IP based.
Yeah, you can if the user has that data loaded into their profile and they're viewing your video logged into their profile, but that's something you can't get if somebody's just on YouTube, they're not
Yeah.
logged in,
Yeah.
just an IP address.
So we have to wrap up. We did throw together one little slide to summarize best practices from across all the things we have been saying in a more simplified way. But if you have any other ideas for survey questions you want us to add, please DM them to me or tweet them at me. Our Twitter handles are super tiny on there. Sorry about that. But mine's it's my first two names, Ana Chiaretta, EMB Robbins with 2 B's. And then Trilce Navarrete, it's just her full name. And then Elena is ELENUSTIKA. And so those are our Twitter handles. Sheila Carey's also around representing the Data Insights SIG. If you have any specific metrics questions about their presentation, track her down. And yeah, we're here to keep the conversation going. We're just getting started. There's a lot more to be done.